Most polluted city in the world. Meanwhile, we bring you the latest on the Secretary of State's visit, Antony Blinken, in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. For this and more stories, you're watching Switch Focus. I'm Harriet Chimeno. Sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Now, to our top story. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Kenya on his first official visit to Africa. He has just given a press briefing issuing a travel advisory for American citizens in Ethiopia. He was alongside Foreign Cabinet Secretary Rachel Amamo. Stay tuned for more of this on our subsequent bulletin. 14 tons of smuggled gold, rubies and other gems have been illegally exported from Mozambique since the beginning of the year. Mozambique is home to some of the world's largest gemstone deposits, often mined by artisanal miners with no access to official markets. Lincoln Wambugu reports.
Gold, rubies, garnets and tantalite used to create surgical steel have been exported by smuggling networks since January. This is according to Fernando McQueen, a senior official in the Ministry of Mineral Resources. The illegal gem trade is largely concentrated in northern Mozambique, where an Islamist insurgency has forced some 800,000 people to flee their homes. Mining gems and selling them on illicit markets, sometimes through corrupt local officials, has become a means of survival for many displaced people, according to a report released in early November by the Swiss think tank Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, GTOC. The province of Cabo Delgado, the most affected by the insurgency, is home to the Montepuez ruby mine, which currently supplies more than half of the world market for new rubies. The mine has extracted $600 million worth of rubies since official operations began in 2011. Mozambique's Supreme Court Judge Rafael Sebastio, meanwhile, assured that the judiciary is working to prosecute those responsible in smuggling cases. Reporting for Switch TV, I'm Lincoln Wambugu.
A gas explosion in Lagos has killed at least 5 people, including a child, in the densely populated Mushin area in Lagos, Nigeria. Authorities in the area saying the cause of the explosion was a gas cylinder. Lemaya Kefa reports.
A National Emergency Management Agency spokesperson confirmed 3 men, 1 woman and a 10-year-old boy had died, adding that rescue operation is ongoing. The fire broke out after a cylinder exploded at a gas shop in the densely populated Mushin area of Lagos. It was extinguished in about 1 hour. At least 10 people were rescued alive and that they were treated and discharged on the spot. The cause of the explosion is not known yet, but authorities are suspecting one of the gas cylinders exploded as a result of a fire close to the gas shop and work being done on one of the cylinders. Gas explosions are common in Africa's most populous country, especially in Lagos, a city of more than 14 million people. One of the most recent was in October 2020, when an explosion at a gas station killed 8 people and razed many buildings. 2 months ago, the Lagos state government set up a team to monitor outlets where gas is stored in commercial quantity and carry out a safety audit in the state. So far, 1,850 places were surveyed, out of which 15 were closed for not complying with the safety standards, according to Landry Mojola, a Director General Lagos State Safety Commission. In July this year, federal lawmakers in Nigeria asked authorities to design a strategy to regulate the use of old gas cylinders, arguing that the continued use of old gas cylinders can cause explosions, especially in poorly controlled environments. A committee has been formed to investigate the incident. Kefa Lemayan for Switch TV.
Samir Handal, a man of interest in the investigation of the murder of Haitian President Jovenel Moise, has been arrested in Turkey. The businessman was detained at Istanbul airport while he was in transit from the United States to Jordan. David Kagina with the details.
Samir Handal is alleged to have links to Christian Emmanuel Sanon, a Haitian doctor who was arrested in July in connection with Moise's murder. Handal was reportedly living in Miami, the U.S. prior to his arrest. It is however not known why he was flying to Jordan. In total, more than 40 suspects have been detained. Turkish authorities say they acted after Interpol had issued an international arrest warrant for businessmen. The president was shot dead on 7th July by gunmen who stormed his residence in the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince. Many of those in detention are former members of Colombian military. many of whom say they were hired to provide security services in Haiti and were not told about a plan to kill the president. Christian Emmanuel Sanon, the Haitian doctor Mr. Handal is alleged to have links to, was arrested shortly after President Moise's murder. The then police chief Leon Charles described Mr. Sanon as someone who had political objectives and accused him of recruiting the Colombian mercenaries. However, analysts have questioned whether Mr. Sanon, a doctor who lived in Miami, had the financial means and connections to mastermind such an operation. The investigation into Mr. Moise has been slow and has been further set back by the resignations of key officials, with investigators reporting that they are receiving death threats and being intimidated. David Kagina, Switch TV.
Thank you, David Kagina, for that report. Now, a joint meeting led by Russian ministerial coordination committees has been held in Damascus to further discuss the return of Syrian refugees. In addition to representatives of Syria and Russia, representatives of the United Nations, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and other humanitarian organizations also attended the meeting. Take a look.
Syrian Minister of Local Administration and Environment Hussein Makhlouf said that the meeting held last year in Damascus has gained a significant achievement, as with the help of the Syrian government and friendly countries, hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees have returned home. The minister also said that the Syrian government will continue to improve infrastructure and provide the necessary medical and educational guarantees to ensure a stable life for the returning refugees.
I mean, it's very clear to us that the reasons that most of these refugees that have fled in the first place have not been resolved at all. In the past decade, we've seen the Syrian government continue to commit the same abuses that they've committed since 2011, with no reform in sight, with no change in sight.
The representative of the Syrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that although some progress has been made, the return of Syrian refugees is still difficult. In particular, the occupation and seizure of parts of Syrian territory by the United States and Turkey have created huge obstacles and challenges for refugees to return home.
The evidence that we have clearly shows that Syrian refugees are at risk of persecution, and any kind of call for Syrians to return prematurely is only going to result in them facing serious risks and even death. These kinds of calls are not grounded in reality.
According to statistics, there are still 6 million Syrian refugees stranded in other countries. Kefa Lemayan for Switch TV.
Schools have been shut indefinitely as hospitals in New Delhi report a spike in the number of patients with respiratory ailments. Doctors are blaming the surge to the toxic smog blanketing India's capital, New Delhi. Lincoln Ombuguri narrates.
This city, New Delhi, is home to 20 million people and is ranked as the world's most polluted capital due to coal-fired energy plants and burning garbage out in the open. The burning of rice paddy straws also contributing to pollution in winter. Dr. Bobby Balotra sees patients at Ganga Dam Hospital and is worried of the spike.
It gives a history of exposure to prolonged, pollution exposure, or a post-COVID recovering patient, big numbers because of the pollution.
New Delhi has battled a toxic haze since earlier this month, but this week took emergency measures, shutting down schools and construction work for 4 days. As air quality plummets, the Supreme Court has ordered measures to halt non-essential vehicle traffic, cut industrial pollution and limit dust. The court also told authorities to shut offices in New Delhi and nearby cities and allow millions of people to work from home. But not everyone can. Food vendors are forced to breathe the harsh air and endured burning hours to make a living.
We have to come with our stalls in any weather because it's our livelihood. The pollution is unbearable. The government must take some steps. We are forced to work because we can't stay indoors forever.
The air quality index in New Delhi on Monday touched 403 out of 500, indicating severe conditions that can cause respiratory illness on prolonged exposure. Flora Limuki, Switch TV.
At least one person has died in Canada's largest port cut off by flood waters after the intense atmospheric river event slammed the region, bringing it with it record-shattering rainfall and damaging winds, triggering evacuations. Lincoln Wambugu narrates.
Canada's largest port was cut off by flood waters as emergency crews in British Columbia announced that at least 10 vehicles had been swept off a highway during a landslide. Such crews working alongside the military plan to use heavy equipment and dog teams to continue their search for survivors after poor weather hampered efforts. On Monday, rescue helicopters airlifted 275 people, including 50 children, from a section of highway blocked by landslides. Although the high winds and the rains caused by an atmospheric river, a huge plume of moisture extending over the Pacific, began easing in the region, most of British Columbia remained under either flood watch or flood warning. South of the border, tens of thousands of households and businesses remain without power in Washington state. Authorities said one person was still missing on Tuesday near Bellingham after being seen in flood waters clinging to a tree. The Washington Governor Jay Inslee declared a severe weather state of emergency in 14 counties and said the State Emergency Management Division, with support from the Washington National Guard, would coordinate the response. Earlier in the day, the Port of Vancouver, the largest in Canada, announced that all rail access had been cut by floods and landslides farther to the east, a development that could hit shipments of grain, coal and potash. The Trans Mountain Pipeline, which carries 300,000 barrels of oil a day, was also shut down. Reporting for Switch TV, I'm Lincoln Wambugu.
Thank you, Lincoln Wambugu, for that story. We take a short break, but we'll be right back with more. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned. My name is Harriet Chimaina. Our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Now we move on, where 20 international flights have made their landing at the Jose Marti International Airport in the Cuban capital of Havana in the recent days, as the country saw its first day of a local COVID-19 border restriction removal. This comes after protests and calls from religious leaders in the country.
The Cuban government started to ease coronavirus border restrictions as the number of daily COVID-19 cases went down. By mid-October, 9 airports in other Cuban cities had resumed their commercial international flights. Passengers no longer need to take a nucleic acid test at the airport when entering the border, but they do need to carry with them the health certificate, proof of vaccination, or test results within 72 hours. The latest requirements apply only to those aged 12 years and above, and no mandatory hotel quarantine are required for all international travelers, although random sampling will be made at the airport. Although the first day saw only 20 flights coming in, transportation officials said the number is expected to spike to 170 per week, while figure for the whole country might rise to more than 400. Shilangetich, Switch TV.
Thank you, Shilangetich, for that report. Now, Afghan Taliban has removed a mass of blast walls and concrete barricades in capital Kabul, a move raising hope for lasting security that was welcomed by local residents. The roadblocks, blast walls and checkpoints had been put up on many roads and streets in Kabul for security reasons for years, causing traffic havoc and making it difficult for people to commute. The move to pull down the barricades and resume traffic on the roads has been welcomed by local residents. The process to demolish the barriers started in late August. The Kabul municipal government had previously said that it would actively carry out various municipal works.
I used to take this road to get in and out of my house in the past, but the road was open only to pedestrians and closed to vehicle traffic. It's much better now with these roads open to the traffic. These roads were blocked in the past. Take soundbite. These roads were blocked in the past. It was very troublesome for us if we have a patient at home who needs to see a doctor. Even if the straight line distance is close, we could not get to the hospital in a short time. Now we are very happy as most of the roads are open.
Cuba has launched multi-pronged measures to beat the country's raging inflation, which is increasingly rapid than expected due to the tightening of U.S. embargo, the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, and the island's nation's painful monetary overhaul. Chapter Boyd reports.
Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has said that fighting inflation is at the top of the government's agenda. He noted that the key to solving the problem is increasing domestic production and supply. To soften the blow of high inflation, the Cuban government is taking measures to stimulate production and increase supply, including liberalizing the private sector and allowing the creation of micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. The Cuban government has also adopted compensation measures to cushion the impact of inflation on vulnerable groups.
The prosperity and development of private enterprises, in addition to contributing to individual and collective prosperity, will also solve the obstacles that hinder the country's economic development. I believe that the private sector has great potential to enable many sectors to achieve greater development in the complementarity of state-owned and private economies.
The Cuban government in January put into effect a monetary overhaul in hopes of improving the country's economic performance amid the pandemic and tightening of U.S. sanctions ahead. The Cuban government in January put into effect a monetary overhaul in hopes of improving the country's economic performance amid the pandemic and tightening of U.S. sanctions against the island. The reform eliminates the dual currency system in place on the island since 1994 and increases salaries, pensions, and social security payments while transforming the pricing structure completely. On Sunday, the Caribbean nation registered 348 new COVID-19 infections and 3 more related deaths, taking the national caseload to 958,738 and the death toll to 8,242. Chepto Boit, Switch TV.
Restaurants, bars and cafes in Greece went on strike to protest the government's new COVID-19 restrictions on unvaccinated people, which have negatively affected the country's food and beverage industry.
A 24-hour strike was called by the Pan-Hellenic Federation of Restaurant and Related Professions, a trade union that represents workers in the service and tourism industries. The new rules introduced on Saturday restrict unvaccinated people from entering retail stores, banks, hair and beauty salons, and outdoor areas of eateries like cafes and restaurants without COVID-19 tests. Businesses are seeing their revenues plummet since the measures came into force, which have created strong dissatisfaction amongst business owners and workers as they have said their livelihoods have been severely affected. Customers must produce a full vaccination certificate, a certificate of recovery from COVID-19 within the last 6 months, or negative test results in order to enter various establishments. Business owners and federation leaders said the rules have caused financial difficulties in the service industry. According to the Hellenic Statistical Authority, about 2,000 businesses have shut down, with thousands losing their jobs since the start of the pandemic. Greek Minister of Development and Investment Adonis said the government aid will not turn their backs on the business owners. Greece maintains a lower vaccination rate compared with other European countries, which only accounts for 61.1% of its population fully vaccinated. Shilangetich, Switch TV.
A robotic apple harvester is helping farmers improve efficiency and lower costs in northwest China's Shaanxi province during the peak harvest season. As the peak harvest season arrives, Luochuan County is using a remotely controlled robotic apple harvester at one local orchard to reduce labor costs and improve efficiency. Last year, the annual output value of the region's apple reached 6 billion yuan, that is around $939 million US.
If I can use a robotic harvester to pick apples next year, I think it can ease my burden. For one thing, it picks apples faster, and for another, the cost is lower. It can sort the apples well while harvesting them, which greatly reduces the cost and time.
Iraq is set to start repatriating hundreds of its citizens who have camped out along the Belarusian-Polish border since August from Thursday, while many others are still attempting to make their way into the European Union. Omar with this report.
The European Union has blamed Belarus for stoking a humanitarian crisis on its external borders, an accusation the country has denied while expressing its readiness for dialogue. Meanwhile, Poland's Deputy Interior Minister said on Monday that thousands of migrants from Iraq, Syria and Yemen were trying to cross from Belarus into Poland near the Kuzykna border crossing. Police authorities said that they are sending reinforcements to the Kuzykna area to monitor the situation, as the country's defense ministry said that the number of migrants gathered at the border crossing has been steadily growing. The latest reports estimate that numbers are between 2,000 to 4,000. The situation has been met with dismay in the nearby village of Bohoniki, which is one of the last remaining Muslim Tara communities in this part of Poland.
What is happening right now on the Polish-Belarusian border is simply a tragedy. Unfortunately, the refugees there have terrible conditions. That's the worst side of all this. I hope they will receive help in some way, that countries agree on how to do it, how to help them, whether they be taken to Germany or taken back to their own countries.
A handful of local gathers at the village to bury a Syrian migrant who drowned into the Bag River when he tried to cross from Belarus. Omar Mohammed, Switch TV.
A Chinese sanitation worker in Ningbo City, East China's Xinjiang province, held a small exhibition to display traditional Chinese painting works after 3 years of self-study from teaching videos on social platforms. Shilangetich reports.
Chen Zhenjiang is a sanitation worker of Haishu district. The special exhibition for his painting works, which was originally scheduled for only 1 week, had been prolonged for several times as it is quite popular among nearby residents and Chen's colleagues.
I posted a short video of what I was drawing on WeChat Moments one day at noon. After seeing my video, our manager of the sanitation service center called me and said, "I think your painting works are pretty good. How about I organize an exhibition for you?"
Although he liked painting very much, Chen had never thought of holding an exhibition to display his own painting works. Eventually, the small art exhibition was held at a 40-square-meter showroom of the cultural station to display Chen's painting works created over the past more than 3 years. Unexpectedly, the exhibition became quite popular as soon as it was launched.
I was quite excited and happy when I heard that my colleague held an exhibition of his paintings. It shows that we farmers, sanitation workers also have dreams and pursuits, and I admire this kind of thing quite a lot.
Chen created all paintings displayed at the exhibition in his spare time. He's on duty for sanitation work in the afternoon, so he has a part-time job in the morning to earn some extra money. Therefore, he has time to study and paint only in the evening. After a busy day, Chen returns to his dormitory, which was provided free by a school where he worked part-time and enabled him to save money for renting a house. The desk and tools for painting take up a lot of space of his 10-square-meter dormitory.
I drew with pencils or ballpoint pens at home during my leisure time before learning traditional Chinese painting. As I have been interested in painting since I was in school, when I saw something that interested me, I would draw it.
As a painting enthusiast with no basic knowledge, Chen has been learning from videos over the past more than 3 years to pursue his dream. Shilangetich, Switch TV.
That story brings us to the end of our bulletin. My sign anchor has been Teresia Washira, my producer Shilangetich, and I, Harriet Chimea. Enjoy the rest of your viewership.